an opening idea I had to this episode where it's like it opens up, it's just you sitting here by yourself, and you're kind of like, and then like I kind of like cue beam in over to your side there, and you like I beam in, you're like, what? I'm like, that's right, Josh. It's another episode where it's about me, Q. And we're here to talk about Star Trek: The Next Generation again.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. It just sounds like a lot of work, though. I don't really want to do that.
Picard faces Q's wrath when the Enterprise is hurled into a living nightmare.
We have an intruder.
Now the crew is helpless against an invincible race of alien killing machines.
You can't outrun them. You can't destroy them.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Well, Alex, let's be honest. After seeing Matter of Honor and The Measure of a Man, and then the preceding few episodes, some that we liked, some we didn't, we had kind of started to think, okay, well, we've seen the best of what this season had to offer. But we forgot about one man, John DeLance.
What is going on?
Welcome, Picard. The shuttlecraft's sick.
If you don't know, we started watching the episodes not knowing the titles, specifically because of Q. Because like there was an episode in season 1 where what was it called?
Hide and Q.
Hide and Q, where it's like, well, I wonder who's going to show up. And when his web showed up, it was like, oh, well, there he is. But like watching this one, not knowing that Q was going to show up, and when he did, it was like, what?
Q.
Especially not seeing him for like an entire season plus, because the last time we saw him was season 1, episode 10 or something,
Yep.
And this is what, episode 16. And like what like a welcome surprise. We've seen Klingons, we've seen Romulans, we've kind of gone through the gauntlet of like all the Star Trek stuff, but to the point where I'm like, I almost forgot about Q. And not only was Q in this episode, but Guinan was in this episode. Whoopi Goldberg making a return, and like a little bit of lore building that these two ancient species know each other.
This creature is not what she appears to be. She's an imp, and where she goes, trouble always follows.
It's like, ooh. And then we also got introduced to the Borg. This episode was, I gotta say, a home run.
Yeah, it was jam-packed. I'm excited to jump into it. So we got Rob Bowman directing.
Rob Bowman. Whenever you need the job done, you call Rob. All reliable, pull out Rob Bowman.
But it starts off, I'm sorry to say, for me, on a little bit of a low note. I think there's finally a character I don't like. Ensign Sonia Gomez.
Oh, no! Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Captain.
It just didn't work for me.
Really?
I'll give her, I don't know if she's on the show after this at all, but if she is, like, I'll give her time to grow. We'll see what happens. You know, I don't like to be too judgmental. With the Wesley hate, I was like, okay, let's give him some credit here and there. With Dr. Pulaski, you know, I've given her credit. But, like, I don't know with this one, and I'm probably way off. No one probably gives a shit about this character at all. But, like, for me, I was like, just does not fit in this show. Like, acting like she's in, like, I Love Lucy or something, like, with how hokey her, you know, writing and performance. I don't want to blame just the actress. Like, the writing, too. Oh, shucks, it's my first day. I have this hot chocolate. Whoa! Sorry, Picard!
First impressions, right? Isn't that what they say? First impressions are the most important?
I'll give you this. It's a meeting the captain won't soon forget.
Oh, what a first impression. It's like, what show am I watching? And if the whole episode was going to be like this weird, goofy side character episode, that's one thing. But no, it's just in this Q episode, which is jam-packed with stuff. So that opening scene was kind of weird.
Very odd opening, yeah. Like, I've expressed to you, like, I want a show where it's about someone coming up in Starfleet, or they get their first mission. Wouldn't that be cool?
Like the protagonist of our show is just a low-level person,
yeah,
rookie.
And, like, can you imagine, like, over the years, we watched that person grow through different shows, all the way up to a captain? Wouldn't that be nuts?
That actually sounds like a great idea, yeah. So, a little bit of a weak opening, but then we get probably the coolest camera shot of the whole episode, tracking Picard going into the, wherever he was supposed to go.
Yeah, just, like, 10 seconds of shooting. Like, the most memorable, like, camera work.
Deck 9, officers' quarters.
It created that otherworldly sense, because
Yeah.
like right after that,
Like something weird is happening.
yeah, something weird's gonna happen here, and then like the blue lighting, it's like what's going on? Q is back.
There, haven't we been careless? A little cleaning service I'm only too happy to provide.
just such a powerful actor, and it's like
He's great, yeah.
yeah, like just be able to carry an entire aura of this like otherworldly, godlike character, and like so mysterious. Where it's like, what does he know that he's not telling me? He just perfectly encapsulates that, and the fact that he's just like fucking with us the entire time. It's so great. And then we add Guinan to the mix. It's like there's more to this lore, and like the continuity of like, oh yeah, I was kicked out of the Q World Order.
The other members of the Q Continuum kicked you out.
Not all the Q are alike. Some are almost respectable.
And this time there weren't any Q illusions. Everything happening in this episode, at least the way it was presented to us, is real and happening. So Q actually takes a shuttlecraft from the Enterprise. They're way far out where they can't be detected. The Enterprise realizes he's gone. They're like, what the hell? And Q says, I have an offer for you. Take me back to the Enterprise and then we'll discuss it. Picard agrees. So they go back into 10 Forward, and that's when we see the introduction of this relationship between Guinan and Q. And more great camera work here when they get into 10 Forward and then Guinan comes up from behind the bar and everyone else is gone. Oh yeah, we did forget to mention before this, there's a scene where it just shows Guinan in 10 Forward and she's just like sensing something, and that's what it was sensing was Q. We didn't know that yet, but she's just walking around the bar and she's like, what's going on?
Something's not right.
Yeah, and I love the moment when she calls up to the bridge.
Bridge, this is 10 Forward.
Guinan? I don't remember you ever calling the bridge before.
This is like such a weird detail to include.
Yeah, it's so great. Like you can call up here. It's like, yeah, is there something going on? No.
Yeah.
We're all good.
Like Riker probably thought that was so odd.
It adds to Guinan's character. Like it's like, okay, she's obviously possibly
Something.
Yeah, timeless. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's centuries ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, Q's obviously timeless, so I appreciate just that little. That's all we need.
And
That's all we need.
you knew there was something more to her than just being a human because you have a little bit more TNG knowledge than me. I knew nothing. So this whole time I've just seen her as a bartender and that's it, with, you know, probably some cool history. And then this happened and I was like, you know, what are you? What can you do? And I'm excited to get to that because they, you know, she's only in a few episodes of the show so far, and like she's just been there as a supporting character. This was the first time she's like, I'm a real character in this show, so that excites me. But I love just their poses when they're like standing there like this. And Riker and Worf also come in at 10 Forward, and Q says to him that he basically wants to join the Enterprise.
This ship is already home for the indigent, the unwanted, the unworthy. Why not for a homeless entity?
Q is known for like snapping his fingers and switching outfits, but the entire time, I gotta give it credit, he's had a Starfleet uniform on. And he has the 4 signets right here, similar to Picard. And I don't know if it was intentional, but I like how, I feel like Q being Q, he would have like either 5 or 6 or have an entire thing around. You know, it's like, I feel like he respects Picard. He's had enough experience with Picard where it's like, yes, you're just a human, but it's like you have good morals, good values. I like you, but I also like with you. But I also respect you, so I'm not going to overstep. But it's like, let me on your ship.
Yeah, and they reject him. They say no at first. So he snaps his fingers and blows them 7,000 light years away to where it would take them max, I think they said max warp speed, 2 years,
2 years
to get back.
2 years and something, yeah.
Yeah, so that's insane. And you know right then that it's like, okay, so at the end of the episode he's going to bring it back because they're not going to spend 2 years getting back. So you have that in the back of your mind. But then I really loved, this is where they start to set up the lore.
You are about to move into areas of the galaxy containing terrors to freeze your soul.
Guinan has also been out here, you know, her species or race, whatever she is, you know, have encountered things out here, so she's a little bit more familiar. So they're all kind of building up how it's like, you don't want to be out here.
If I were you, I'd start back now.
There's the neutral zone, but beyond that, we've never been introduced to like anywhere in space being like particularly special or different.
Yeah, we've been like pushed out of into the outer rim per se, but we've always been pushed back. So, but after being pushed out into outer space, we get introduced to a new villain.
Magnify.
I love TNG, but like one thing we've heavily relied on is the enemies of our past. We love referencing TOS. That's the blueprint. That's where it started. You know what I mean? It started there. and Klingons, Romulans, all started from there. So they tried with the Ferengi, where it's like, okay, this is not going to work. But I feel like the Borg, and I feel like just through general pop culture, like I'm guessing that that's not the last appearance of the Borg. And like, what a great villain to introduce. Like
the way it just shows up just as a cube, like this metallic cube in space, is awesome. And it takes a while to figure out what's going on until eventually one of these things just beams aboard the Enterprise. And this is where it really flipped the script, because this episode I feel like is one of those, and yes, it's setting up the Borg and it's setting up Guinan and all this stuff, but it really feels like it's taking Star Trek somewhere new. And anytime you introduce like a big deal like this, I feel like you do that in Star Trek, and this was an example of that. Yes, the character episodes are really great, and that's why we loved Matter of Honor and The Measure of the Man for all the character stuff.
Right.
This one isn't necessarily huge into character stuff, but it's more of that like world building that we've been missing in TNG. Like you said, it's felt very reliant on TOS for the world building. There's been some cool new stuff, and obviously we can't ignore Q as, you know, one of the biggest parts of it that's introduced. But it's like the Ferengi have fell flat so far. Everything else they've introduced has just been kind of like small, minute things. So for this to be introduced, the Borg, like our first TNG thing.
our TNG villain.
Yeah, and I think they knocked it out of the park. Like, it's weird and different. It's not just another big, like, strong Klingon-type race, or, you know, it's different from Klingons, different from Romulans, you know, different than everything we've seen. It's like its own unique thing.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
He's just a scout, the first of many. He's here to analyze your technology. He may attempt to gain control of the ship.
And this was the weirdest moment to me. When Q appears behind Picard here, and he whispers in his ear, no one acknowledges that he's there, or no one is like, oh, it's Q. But then later on in the episode, he does it again, and like you said, other characters do like look at him, but don't acknowledge him. So did they just not think about that? Like, it was very weird.
It seemed to make a visual survey of the engine core, sir.
Interesting, isn't it? Not a he, not a she.
Worf just kind of stands there and does nothing for a while, and Picard's like, Mr. Worf, Mr. Worf. Finally, they get him.
Oh
back.
yeah, when the thing's like scanning, it's like, Worf.
And then Worf just like sends one of his guys who just gets tossed.
Yeah, you do it.
And then Worf finally takes this thing out, and then a second one just appears and takes the first one with it, and it's just like, what the hell just happened? It was crazy. And then we get Riker and Data beaming over to the Borg cube ship thing. But first we get one of those really good conversational scenes.
I wasn't there personally. He swarmed through our system. There was little or nothing left of my people.
And I love the little detail of how she's like, I wasn't there personally, but from what I've heard, like just that little thing, is nice. And then Picard's like, all right, beam over. And Guinan's like, what? Like, exclaims. I love that, because everyone else on the ship knows not to question the captain. That's the final thing. Maybe they'll have like a little look of like, they're not sure. But no, Guinan's not used to that. So she's just like, what? Questions it.
Yeah, Guinan's never like a part of these meetings per se.
Yeah.
She just works in the bar. It's like, oh yeah, beam over there. And like, I think they even mentioned the episode before. It's like, oh, do you ever question when Picard makes,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, no, it's like, Picard's our guy. He makes the best judgment call. But like Guinan, she works in the bar, so what?
Yeah.
I wouldn't go there if I were you.
I don't know, Guinan, they paid us a visit. It seems only fair that we return the courtesy.
This was great. I mean, they go over there.
It was Riker's big three. It was him, Data, and Worf, his like two best friends.
Yeah, and they go over there, and all the Borg are like Matrix style, hooked up into the walls, not acknowledging them at all. And then one of the Borg actually like comes unhooked and just walks right past them and does not care.
Yeah, to the point where they had to move out of the way, I feel like. The best comparison I can think of is a shot from Total Recall, where it's like you can tell it's like this is a bit off, and they do that dramatic zoom out, where it's like where it shows like the Matrix level area.
Probably the most surprising element of the Borg is once Riker goes into the Borg nursery. Because I had thought, oh, these were just like mechanical creatures that somehow evolved, came about. But no, like they were humanoid species. and then they discovered this, how to infuse artificial intelligence into themselves, implant it into their brain, and now they do it right from when you're a baby.
From the look of it, the Borg are born as a biological life form.
Wow, that's pretty nuts.
Where are these babies coming from?
I'm guessing they breed and, just kind of make them. Like, it seems like they're pretty mindless. Well, let's talk about that. They're a hive mind. I'm going to be upfront. I do not like hive mind a lot. Like, I feel like it's overdone a lot. There's stuff that it's good in, but it's like a lot of times I'm like, oh, it's another hive mind thing. I don't mind it here because of the way the Borg was set up and like their whole gimmick. It makes sense, and it's like, we haven't seen that in Star Trek, I've seen it in other media. Let's see how Star Trek does it, so I'm open to it. But I will just preface it, moving forward, it's not my favorite gimmick.
Isn't that your favorite because you're expecting like a Phantom Menace or an Avengers where it's like,
yeah, exactly, or it's like, oh, kill
the main brain and the whole thing dies.
That's one element. I think it's also too just sometimes used as a crutch. Oh, we don't have to build out individual characters. It's like the Stormtrooper effect. It's like, we don't have to build out individual characters because they're just this monolith, so don't worry about it. And so they'll
easy enemy to hate.
Yeah, we don't have to actually build out any of these small, like, they're just all one thing. And it's like, again, it can work. A hive mind, it can work. It's not always wholesale bad. I'm just saying, for me personally, I more so prefer a Q, or for Klingons, for each Klingon to be individualized, different Klingon villains. So we'll see how the Borg goes. I was very impressed, like I've said. I liked everything about them in this episode. So that's my one hesitancy. I hope they just don't get too lazy with it. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, I feel like it's way too early on. You know what I mean? It's like, this is our first introduction, probably very shallow introduction.
Yeah, I'm open-minded.
For a first introduction, I'm okay with it.
Yep. So basically, it gets to the point where they realize that they're not going to get out of this, and Q has been begging for Picard to admit that he needs him this whole time, and finally, Picard does. And it just shows the humility of Picard and how he's always going to do what's right by the ship.
You wanted me to say, I need you? I need you!
Fine, I need your help. Okay, there you go.
Yep, instantly snaps him away.
It's like, that's why I love this episode, I think, because it's like Picard was willing to admit, it's like, you know what? 18 people have died already for no damn reason. You know what? Yes, I need your help, Q. Fine, I need your help. Because he realizes Q was just an ego machine, I feel like.
I like how when Q returned in Hiding Q, they referenced the pilot episode. And then when he returned here, they referenced the pilot episode and Hiding Q.
The next time we saw you, you asked me to join the Q continuum.
A big mistake that you didn't accept my offer.
So I'm like, will they keep it going next time he shows up? Will they reference the pilot, Hiding Q, and this episode? Like, it just keeps growing every time?
That'd be amazing. But I'm glad you brought that up, because there's another great scene where it's the bridge and you just see like someone working in the background.
The Borg are still gaining.
They will follow the ship until you exhaust your fuel.
Q is just working in the back. It's like, that's great. It's great. I love that shot, because you think, oh, it's just someone working on those back computers. There's always someone working on those back computers. And then the reveal that Q is like that person. It's like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they just shift focus but kept on that camera shot.
Yes.
Not cut to like another angle.
Yeah. Shift focus. Perfect.
Yeah. He brings them back and is basically like, that's all I wanted, and just disappears. And that's all he wanted that time.
But he brings up the 18 people dying thing.
But I think the lesson could have been learned without the loss of 18 members of my crew.
I wish you could have done that with 18 people dying. Like, you know what you got into when you went out here, Picard.
If you can take a little bloody nose, maybe you ought to go back home and crawl under your bed. It's not safe out here. That's not for the timid.
We've talked about that, like the realness of dangerous of being out here. Why we love the funeral scene so much. Like, yes, we're giving respect to those fallen people, but it's like, fuck, man, that could be any of us at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get one last ending scene, which is funny because after the Q scene and Picard says his engage, which is usually the last line, it shows the Enterprise for 10 seconds.
An uncomfortably long amount of time.
And I was like, okay, where's the executive producer, Gene Roddenberry? Like, when's it coming? And then it cuts to another scene. I'm like, oh. And we usually don't like epilogue type scenes. Like we think a lot of times it's not needed. Here I thought it went well with the scene with Picard and Guinan playing the 3D chess, and just kind of like a little setup, a little tease. Like,
Since they're aware of your existence,
They will be coming.
you can bet on it.
there you go. The show is making their intention clear. Kind of similar to the Romulans, we are back. Kind of the same way. I like how this show, it lets you know. Q in the pilot episode did the same thing. Like, I'll be back. Like, they tell you right up front, this isn't a character that we're just going to forget about.
Yeah, this isn't like a villain of the week type episode. And like TNG has been pretty good so far. Like, whatever happens could come back later on at any point. And like, kudos to everyone involved. I do love that ending as well. Like, I love TOS to death. You know what I mean? But like those happy endings, it's like I love those like stark, cold, not sad, but it's like that's the way it is endings.
Yeah.
And this was one of them, but a bit different because that 10 seconds of footage of the ship just traveling. It's like, where's the credit? You know what I mean? So I wish they could have like switched those two clips.
It's just like, why was it so long?
Yeah, why? Yeah, it was so long to
weird,
the point.
Odd complaint.
To the point where someone could have walked away. It's like, oh, there's another scene here.
Yeah.
But
walk or turn your TV off. You think it's over?
As if that would matter. But
yeah.
But yeah, I do love the whole like, that's not the last we're going to see of them. Instead of like, oh, that was.
Perhaps what we most needed was a kick in our complacency to prepare us for what lies ahead.
Realizing, oh shit, like there's these bigger threats out there. We're not the end all be all. We can overcome anything, because they were no match for the Borg. Like they would have died if Q was
That's
not
a good
there.
point. That's a good point. They would have been destroyed. And you know how I feel about like I wish our team. I'm so double-edged sword. It's like characters need to lose to have that growth.
Yeah, redeem
you know what
themselves.
I mean?
Yeah.
But also like I feel like our team is like this, and like thinking of them just losing and dying to the Borg unless Q did something. It's like, thank God Q was there, but Q was the whole reason.
He put him in that position. Yeah.
Q put him in that position, so it works out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, but I think it's a great episode. It's great.
Yeah, and I want to just last compliment to it. I love the structure. It's not an A-B structure. It's not just one story. It evolves as it goes on. It's kind of like Heart of Glory did that too, where it's like, this is the story, now this is the story, now this is the story. Where it starts off with the Q twist, bring in Guinan, he wants to be on the Enterprise, throws him out into space, introduce the Borg. It was like this, then this, and it kept you engaged, and the pacing was great. So, yeah, great all around.
18 people. Dead just like that. I keep seeing them.
Sonya, stop it.
All right, let's see what our patrons have to say.
This one's from JD. Absolutely loved that they took their two most fascinating recurring characters, Q and Guinan, and gave them a history and instant animosity. For a character drama, it makes for an even richer set of circumstances and situations. I agree. What a great choice to make them like, because at this point we've known very little about Guinan. Like, you know what? Let's add a little deeper lore to the bartender character. What if she was like an omnipotent? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's like similar to Q, where it's like a long-lasting character, where it's like, oh shit, they know each other, and like what a great character to have being like a long-lasting character than the bartender. You know what I mean? Like, of course, the long-standing bartender listening to everyone's stories. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. All right, this one's from CM Waters. Here's a question for you guys, given your Trek connections. Were all things equal for this situation, do you think Kirk would have had the same humility Picard had here, asking Q for help at the end of the episode, especially with Kirk not believing in a no-win scenario? I do, because I think I think Picard saw this way as well. I think Kirk would see that as the win. Like, I don't think, like, saying that to Q and like saying, oh, I need you, help me out of this, is like not a win. Like, you get out of it how you need to get out of it. Not winning is dying. That's the only not winning, you know?
So, that's it. That's what you want, Q? You want me to ask for help? You want me to beg? You want me to ask for all your help? Then I'll do it. I'll ask for your help, Q. Help me. Help me, Q. Yeah,
there you go.
Save my people. Yeah, that I feel like. Yeah, Kirk would. He would assess the situation the same. I feel like captains go through the same vigorous training.
Yep.
And I feel like Kirk would come to that same like, you want me to beg? You want me to be humiliated? You want me to? He would do that for his people. He would absolutely do that for his people.
Yeah.
Then do it. Then save me, Q. I'm asking for your. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
for sure. I saw some people mentioning those outposts that were mentioned earlier, destroyed by the Borg, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they like 100% confirmed that, but they were just like, this is what happened to the outposts. So it's kind of like for you to figure it out.
Yeah, must have been the Borg.
This one's from Neil. I'd pay real money to see Guinan and Q throw down. 100% agree. We got to see that eventually.
I'm picturing like two gods, like if you let two gods loose like on a planet, they can just destroy it with their battle. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like Thor, like Greek mythology, Thor versus like some other, Thor versus Kratos, for example. Like if they were like totally let loose, they could destroy the entire world just like in their battle. That'd be guy, that'd be Guinan and Q. This one's for Fate Stealer. The plot thickens for Guinan's lore, with a winky face at the end.
Oh, apparently that actress who played Sonia Gomez was the three-breasted lady from Total Recall.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I've mentioned Total Recall how many times tonight? That's crazy.
This is an interesting one. This is from Bab. IMO, ending the action with a triumphant Q lecturing Picard is the most daring thing Star Trek has done since killing Spock. Question for you guys. Is TNG a better show if this story gets used for the pilot? I don't know. That's a really good question. I feel like, first of all, this would obviously be better than the pilot was. I didn't care for Encounter at Farpoint that much. But, I mean, I don't even know how it could. I mean, like I said earlier, it's not like this episode was a huge character story or character episode, so there's nothing about it that couldn't have worked as the first episode. You know, you don't need to necessarily like super care about these characters right in this one. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it would be pretty mind-blowing. It'd be so much to take in a pilot episode.
Yeah, stand alone by itself, I don't think it'd work as a pilot episode. I feel like there's things in Encounter at Farpoint where you can strip some things away and place it later on. It would be like an average, whatever, TNG episode. But it's like there's certain establishments in Encounter at Farpoint where it feels like a first episode of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking you take those establishments, like Riker being on the ship for the first time, and some certain like first time meetings, put those in this episode, stretch it to an hour and a half. Introduce a new big bad being the Borg instead of the Ferengi.
It would be tough.
Yeah.
Even with 90 minutes.
It by itself, no. Unedited, the episode it is now.
Yeah, just pick it up and drop it.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. But like, take some of those. Like, obviously, this is in here because it's the first episode. Put those in that episode. Stretch it. Possibly.
It would definitely be a better pilot than the pilot we got, but I would worry that it would be a detriment to this episode we got. Like, I don't think this as the pilot would be...
Yeah, like some things wouldn't work. The reveal of Q would be like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, who's this?
The Guinan thing wouldn't hit as hard because you don't know her yet, so you're just like, she's introduced as this powerful thing. The Borg would be cool because it'd be like, oh, new Star Trek show, new weird villain character, but I don't think I would have cared as much as I do now a season and a half into the show.
Yeah, not a first episode.
Yeah, no. But it would have been a better first episode. Like, I'm not saying, like, it would have been a really cool pilot for sure, a cool story for a pilot, but I'm glad it wasn't.
Yeah, if you took those first episode needs or introductions, put them in this one, dressed it up a bit different, it could work. Maybe. All right, this one's from my favorite screen name, Sinek I can't even say it. Sinek the Hodgehog. Q is absolutely right about Starfleet's arrogance. They create the most powerful ship they could, which could respond to the most dangerous circumstances, and they kit it out like a luxury cruise ship and put families on it. Out of the 18 killed, how many were civilians that really shouldn't be there?
That's a good question.
In terms of the luxury cruise ship with families on there, I don't know. I feel the Enterprise is filled with like all these departments and areas, some of which aren't, necessary all the time, unless the odd occurrence, like Space Seed, like, oh, the ancient.
The
ancient
historian.
Yeah, the ancient historian. Finally, you've been waiting your entire life for this moment. You know what I mean? It's like, one thing I wish we could have explored more as of this point is what else is going on the ship. I guess. You know what I mean? Yes, holodeck is a great tool. You get to see Picard riding on a horse.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know what, besides engineering, besides the bridge, besides the medical bay, like what else is going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like in The Child, not the best episode, but like just getting to see the daycare for one scene.
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah.
there's a daycare here. That makes sense. Like just more one-off scenes like that.
Mm-hmm. And if we could make an entire episode about a person working in one part of the Enterprise, or like, hell, might be a bit ridiculous, but someone working an episode after this where like someone's dealing with the repercussions of those 18 people that died. Like, my so-and-so died, and like it was the whole aftermath of that, maybe, where it's like, my husband died because of Picard's ignorance or whatever. It's like you could have solved this whole problem right away, but no, you and your pride and your ego. That's a Breaking Bad scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be cool, interesting idea for an episode where it starts with something happening where people die, and then the plot of the episode is one of the spouses, the loved ones, whatever, of one of the casualties, going crazy and trying to kill Picard on the ship or something.
Yeah,
because of that.
Or just a court thing. It's like, yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah.
Let's end it with this one. And I just want to say, I'm sorry. I wish we could read all of these. There's so many here, that I'd love to read them all here. But just know we do read all of them, so we appreciate it. But let's end it here with Jason. So glad you finally met the Borg. Get ready for a wild ride, boys. I feel like a lot of people are treating it like the pilot. Like, people are treating this like the introduction to TNG. And I'll be honest, it kind of felt that way. Like, it kind of felt like we were being introduced to a new era of Star Trek, whatever that is, and I'm excited.
Yeah, like the first two seasons the first two that we've seen so far is kind of like our origin story or introduction, where it's like, but if maybe this episode was like, okay, now TNG becomes more of its own thing. There's good episodes, but it's like, okay, we've grown out of our infancy, per se, where it's like, let's become our own show now.
Yeah.
That everyone talks about.
Yeah, and it's funny, we still got 2 more episodes, but it's like, now we're finally arriving to what seems like is going to be TNG, and then we're going to jump back to TOS for Star Trek V. So we'll see how that is. That'll be an interesting visiting back there.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes. Josh was telling me, like, oh yeah, we got to watch Star Trek V. And I'm like, Star Trek what? It's like, oh God. I totally forgot about the TOS cast in the movie. Because after Star Trek 4, we just jumped into TNG, and I kind of, in my mind, I knew there was 2 more movies to watch, but I was so fully bought in on TNG, I totally forgot that there was another TOS movie to watch.
Yeah, and I'm curious how the people of the time when TNG was coming out felt about, the ones that were actually fans of TNG and following along, and now a TOS movie was coming out. That'll be interesting, but we don't got to talk about all that just yet.
Not yet.
But, yeah, this episode was great.